At 17, Ava Carter's world collapsed in a single evening. What should have been a moment of fear softened by love turned into the cruelest rejection she could imagine. When she confessed her pregnancy in their Austin, Texas home, her parents, Mr. James and Mrs. Carroll, didn't hesitate. Her father's voice was sharp, cold, and deliberate. "You've ruined us. You're no daughter of ours." He turned away as if she were a stain he couldn't bear to see. Her mother's response was quieter but cut even deeper, delivered without even looking up from her manicured nails. "You're a failure. Nothing but a mess destroying our reputation." They gave her 10 minutes to leave. As she stuffed a few clothes and a photo into her school backpack, Ava glanced at the family portrait on the mantel. Her father turned the frame face down, as if erasing her existence. The sound of it striking the wood echoed in her chest like a verdict. She was no longer part of their family, but betrayal didn't end there. Jason Wells, the boy she thought she loved, the boy who had whispered forever to her under starlit skies, also abandoned her. When she called him with trembling hands to share the news, his first reaction was calm denial. Days later, his number was blocked. His parents' lawyers sent a letter threatening her should she try to contact him again. Jason's college future mattered more than their child. With nowhere to go, Ava wandered through Austin's streets that night, ending up in Zilker Park. The grass was wet, the benches cold, and every stranger's gaze felt like a spotlight on her shame. The city's hum mocked her as she curled beneath, the dim glow of a street lamp, holding her stomach and whispering to a future that now seemed impossible. Every rejection, from her parents, from Jason, from the world, burned into her chest until it solidified into something harder than grief. A vow. She would survive. She would rise. And one day, they would all regret what they had done. It was then, as dawn crept over the horizon, that Eleanor Vance entered her life. A woman in her 70s, dressed elegantly even on her morning walk with an aging terrier, Eleanor stopped when she saw the shivering teenager. "You'll freeze to death out here, child," she said in a gentle Texas drawl that carried both warmth and authority. Ava tried to lie, insisting she was fine, but her tears betrayed her. Eleanor sat beside her, wrapped a cashmere scarf around Ava's shoulders, and offered her hand. That hand was more than kindness. It was the opening of a new path. Eleanor drove her to her downtown estate, where lavender filled the air and heated car seats thawed her numb body. Over breakfast, Eleanor asked no probing questions, only offered safety. Soon, shelter became mentorship. Eleanor, a widow who had built a hospitality empire from nothing, saw in Ava not a fallen girl but untapped fire. "You must become stronger than the pain they gave you," Eleanor told her over morning coffee. "Don't fight them with anger. Anger fades. Fight them with patience, with precision. Use their weaknesses as tools." That morning marked the true birth of Ava Carter's vow. Not merely to survive, but to grow into someone her enemies could never break, someone whose very existence would become their undoing. Eleanor's mentorship was not coddling, it was sharpening. From the very first day Ava stepped into one of Vance hotels, she was handed not sympathy, but tasks. She started at the bottom, folding towels in the laundry room, balancing trays in the restaurant, and watching every detail of the front desk. Every empire, Eleanor reminded her, is built on understanding its foundations. Learn to serve, and you will one day command. Through this rigorous training, Ava learned patience. She absorbed business strategies in late-night study sessions, shadowed Eleanor during tense meetings with investors, and witnessed how charm could soften an enemy, while iron rules could break one. Over time, Ava shed the fragility of a castaway girl and built what she called her unbreakable shield, a resilience forged from discipline and knowledge. Her past could no longer wound her. It could only fuel her. Core team. Along this journey, Eleanor quietly introduced Ava to trusted allies. Ben Sterling, Eleanor's lawyer of 3 decades, became Ava's tutor in the art of legal warfare. He taught her that contracts were battlefields, and every comma, Every clause could be a hidden weapon. Ava marveled at his ability to find loopholes that even seasoned executives overlooked. The law, he told her once, is not about fairness. It's about foresight. Then came Chloe Lynn, a sharp-minded IT specialist Eleanor had once hired for cybersecurity. Chloe's skill lay not only in protecting systems, but in tracing digital footprints others thought invisible. She could find secrets buried in archives, expose fraud in bank accounts, and track the faintest signal of betrayal. Chloe and Ava bonded quickly, two women shaped by distrust, now building trust brick by brick. Together, they formed the beginnings of a network. Eleanor called them the spine of your future. Ava called them her first true family, heart and trap, but even the strongest shield could not protect her from heartbreak. 2 years into her training, Ava lost her unborn child to a miscarriage. The grief nearly broke her vow, but Eleanor steadied her. Loss is a wound, she said, but it can also be a foundation. Not long after, Ava adopted a baby boy from a shelter. She named him Liam Carter. Liam, after Williamson County, the place where she signed the adoption papers. And Carter, to reclaim her family name on her own terms. Liam became Ava's heart, but also part of her long game. She raised him in a world of books and technology, encouraging him to think, to code, to question. One day, she whispered as she watched him sleep, your brilliance will be the bait that draws them back, and the weapon that destroys them. Eleanor's preparation. As years passed, Eleanor prepared not only Ava but her estate for the inevitable wars to come. In her will, she made her stance clear. Any relative who abandoned family in times of need shall inherit nothing. Every word was rehearsed, every strategy tested in mock confrontations. At the dinner table, Eleanor would play the part of a greedy cousin, while Ava practiced responses with precision. You must never let them see hesitation, Eleanor coached. Hesitation is the crack where vultures slip in. Thus, Ava grew, no longer the girl shivering in a park, but a woman in the making, backed by mentors, allies, and a vow etched deeper with every trial. And with Eleanor's health beginning to fade, Ava knew that soon her training would be tested in a world where betrayal was currency and vengeance her inheritance. By the time Liam turned 12, Ava's vow had matured into a carefully woven net. Eleanor's teachings, Ben's legal drills, and Chloe's technical mastery had become weapons waiting to be unleashed. The bait came in the form of Liam himself, not the boy, but the brilliance she had nurtured within him. Under her guidance, Liam developed a piece of software so promising it caught the attention of his teachers, and with subtle coaching, Ava polished it into something marketable. Then, without attaching her name, she leaked the story. A quiet email to a handful of tech blogs, a fabricated rumor whispered in the right online forums, and suddenly, an anonymous Texas prodigy was the talk of Digital Town. Within days, the news spread like wildfire. It didn't take long for the predators to circle. Mr. James and Mrs. Carroll, the parents who had once discarded her like waste, now resurfaced with extravagant gifts delivered to her doorstep, monogrammed luggage, diamond earrings, even a leather-bound family Bible with Ava's name embossed in gold. They wrote letters dripping with false warmth. We've made mistakes, darling. Family is forever. Let us reconnect with our brilliant grandson. But Ava could see the greed between the lines. Behind the curtain, Chloe Lynn worked her quiet magic. Every email, every click, every innocent search left behind a trail, and Chloe followed like a hunter tracing footprints in fresh snow. Within a week, she built a digital dossier. Their IP addresses revealed, late-night searches for Texas family law and inheritance rights. Repeated visits to websites explaining grandparent custody claims, a string of messages exchanged with none, other than Jason Wells, Ava's former lover and Liam's biological father. The betrayal cut deep, but Ava did not flinch. Chloe's transcripts revealed Jason and her parents plotting like thieves. If the boy's software is worth millions, we should get in on this before Ava locks us out, Jason wrote. Mr. James replied, blood ties give us rights. We can split what's ours 3 ways. Ava smiled when Chloe handed her the file. Their greed was predictable, almost boring in its transparency. And so she poured oil onto the fire. In casual conversations with mutual acquaintances, conversations she knew would drift back to her parents, Ava, accidentally, let slip that Liam's project had already drawn the attention of investors and might soon be worth millions. It was a calculated lie, a spark thrown into dry grass. Within days, her parents' tone shifted from polite reconciliation to feverish insistence. They called, they begged, they even hired a private investigator to follow Liam's school activities. Every move they made confirmed what Ava already knew. The trap was working, and their hunger would soon drive them straight into her carefully prepared snare. The shield she had built was no longer just for protection. It had become a weapon. And this time Ava was not the prey. Once Ava confirmed the greed festering in her parents and Jason, she began the next phase of her plan, dismantling their fragile alliance from the inside. Eleanor had once told her, "A united enemy is dangerous, but a divided one is self-destructive." Ava took that lesson to heart. Her first move was quiet and subtle. Using an anonymous email account routed through multiple servers, she drafted a short, venom-laced message to Mr. James and Mrs. Carroll. "Be careful. Jason has been siphoning money from the so-called reunion fund. Do you really trust him with your legacy?" The seed of suspicion was planted. Ava knew her parents' obsession with money would make the accusation impossible to ignore. Next, she turned her sights on Jason. Through a disposable phone, she sent him a message masked to look like an insider tip. "The Carters are discussing Liam's inheritance. They've already decided you'll get nothing. They're using you until the papers are signed." Jason, impulsive and arrogant, immediately began lashing out. He flooded Ava's inbox with furious texts and voicemails, all repeating the same refrain. "I'm the boy's father. I have rights. Don't think you can cut me out." Ava wasn't finished. She needed to inject panic into the Carter household. For that, she turned to Mrs. Carroll, whose greed had always burned hotter than her husband's. Over tea with a distant family friend, someone Ava knew would rush back with gossip. Ava accidentally revealed that Liam's software had been appraised at $10 million. By the time the rumor reached Mrs. Carroll, it was coded in urgency. Within hours, Carroll was badgering James. "We can't wait any longer. If we don't move now, we'll lose everything." The results were exactly what Ava had anticipated. Tension tightened like a noose. Jason accused the Carters of scheming behind his back. The Carters whispered to each other that Jason was a liability. Carroll pushed James into reckless action, while James grew increasingly paranoid about who might betray him first. From her vantage point, Ava watched it all unfold with cold satisfaction. Every email, every whispered argument, every late-night outburst was logged by Chloe, who monitored their devices like a puppeteer pulling strings. The once united front of Ava's enemies was now splintered, fractured by lies they eagerly believed. And as they tore at each other, Ava tightened her grip on the drama she had orchestrated, knowing the climax was approaching, and soon the stage would be set for their public unmasking. The Carter family's impatience finally boiled over into reckless desperation. Convinced that Liam's software would soon yield unimaginable wealth, Mr. James and Mrs. Carroll filed a lawsuit demanding visitation rights as grandparents and access to what they claimed was their rightful inheritance. Jason Wells quickly attached himself to the suit, portraying himself as the wronged biological father. To them, it was the perfect legal maneuver. To Ava, it was the signal she had been waiting for. The trap was ready to spring. The Austin Tech Summit was the stage Ava had chosen for their undoing, a public forum packed with investors, journalists, and innovators. Liam had been invited to deliver a keynote about his project, and Ava carefully orchestrated every detail around that moment. She personally sent invitations to her parents and Jason, placing them in the front row where every camera would capture their faces. As the lights dimmed and Liam prepared to speak, the enormous screen behind him flickered to life. Instead of charts or code, the elegant face of Eleanor Vance appeared. Her pre-recorded message, calm but cutting, filled the hall. "The measure of family is not blood, but loyalty. Beware the cowards who abandon their own, for they will return only when greed calls them home." Gasps rippled through the audience as her words set the tone for what was to come. Then Ben Sterling stepped forward, holding a thick file of documents. His voice carried the authority of the law itself as he projected one damning page onto the screen, a notarized agreement signed by Mr. James and Mrs. Carroll 22 years ago. In it, they had formally relinquished all rights and claims to Ava Carter and any offspring, born or unborn. The ink of their own signatures shone under the spotlight like a brand of shame. The audience erupted in whispers, cameras flashing furiously. Before they could recover, Chloe Lynn unleashed the final blow. On the screen appeared a string of intercepted emails and chat logs. Mr. James and Mrs. Carroll researching inheritance loopholes, Jason conspiring to manipulate Liam, and all three plotting to divide imagined millions. Each message dripped with greed and contempt, and there was no denying their authenticity. The Carters' faces drained of color as the evidence piled up. Jason tried to protest, shouting over the crowd, but his own words, "I'm the boy's father. I deserve a cut," appeared on screen, silencing him with humiliation. The audience was no longer neutral. They were witnesses to a spectacle of betrayal, a family's rot displayed for all to see. In that moment, Ava did not need to speak. Her enemies had exposed themselves with their own signatures, their own words, their own hunger. All she had done was shine a light on the darkness they had sown, and under that light, their empire of lies crumbled. The silence in the auditorium was suffocating as the last of Chloe's intercepted emails faded from the screen. Ava stood tall at center stage, her eyes fixed on the three people who had defined her pain: Mr. James, Mrs. Carroll, and Jason Wells. For years she had rehearsed this moment, and now, with the world as her witness, she delivered the final strike. "You demand my child," she said, her voice sharp as steel, "but that child does not exist. Your cruelty caused my miscarriage. Liam is not your blood. He is my adopted son, chosen, loved, and raised without you." The words detonated like a bomb. Gasps echoed through the hall, followed by a rush of whispers. The Carter name, once a shield of respectability, was now ashes in the wind. There was no bloodline to claim, no inheritance to seize. Every scheme they had built collapsed in an instant, crushed under the weight of Ava's truth. Jason staggered to his feet, shouting incoherently about his rights, but security held him back. Mrs. Carroll broke down, sobbing into her husband's shoulder, while Mr. James's face turned ashen, his pride shattered before the cameras. Their legacy of power and reputation had been reduced to nothing more than public disgrace. Ben Sterling moved swiftly. Even as the crowd murmured in shock, he handed court officers emergency restraining orders, cutting off all contact between Ava's enemies and her family. The law itself now stood as her shield. Chloe's evidence packet was simultaneously uploaded to the press, ensuring there would be no quiet cover-up. By the next morning, headlines across Texas blazed with scandal. Real estate mogul abandoned daughter, now exposed in inheritance plot. The fallout was merciless. Mr. James was ousted from his real estate company, stripped of his board seat, and forced to sell his mansion to cover mounting debts. Mrs. Carroll, once known for her social luncheons, became a pariah whispered about at the very events she used to command. Jason Wells faced even worse. Years of fraudulent tax filings uncovered by Chloe were handed directly to federal investigators. He was arrested within weeks, facing prison time for crimes of his own making. And Ava, she walked away not as a victim, but as a woman reborn. With Eleanor's inheritance, she and Ben established the Eleanor Vance Foundation, a sanctuary for single mothers cast aside by family or circumstance. The foundation became both her shield and her victory, ensuring that no woman would suffer the isolation she had endured. As she stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony months later, Liam at her side and Ben's hand in hers, Ava finally felt the weight lift from her shoulders. Her revenge was not only in their downfall, it was in the life she had built, a legacy forged from loyalty, resilience, and chosen family. The Carters had sought to bury her. Instead, Ava Carter rose higher than they could ever reach, her vengeance complete, her new empire unshakable.